On a crisp, golden afternoon in early fall, Ms. Evelyn walked down the bustling street towards her favorite neighborhood restaurant. This place wasn't just a dining spot for her. It was where she found warmth, companionship, and familiarity, an extension of her family. She had celebrated birthdays, anniversaries, and many cherished moments there, all wrapped up in the comforting ambience of laughter, shared stories, and friendly faces. The restaurant, with its polished wooden floors, soft lighting, and cozy seating arrangements, was more than just a building. Each corner of the space held memories that had been shaped over years, from her early visits with friends to later celebrations with her children. Her son Thomas had started this restaurant as a testament to community values and inclusivity, with a mission to create a place where anyone could feel at home. This day was special to Evelyn, as it was her birthday. She had arrived early, knowing she'd reserved a table in advance, anticipating a simple but heartfelt evening surrounded by a few loved ones and her favorite meal. She stepped inside, letting the scent of freshly prepared food and familiar ambience envelop her. However, as she entered, Evelyn sensed a subtle but distinct chill in the air, a shift from the usual warmth. The restaurant was busy, filled with lively patrons enjoying their meals, but something was different. No familiar faces greeted her at the door, no friendly nods from the regular waitstaff she'd come to know over time. Instead, her gaze fell upon a new face at the counter, a young waiter with an indifferent, almost dismissive air about him. His posture was rigid, his expression unreadable, and as Evelyn approached him, she saw that he barely looked her way, his eyes flickering briefly over her, before returning to the notepad in his hand. "Good evening," she greeted him warmly, determined to overlook the lack of warmth in his demeanor. "I have a reservation under the name Evelyn." The waiter looked up briefly, barely acknowledging her presence before returning to his task. He seemed to hesitate, as though weighing whether she was worth his time, before he finally spoke. "There are no tables available," he said curtly, not even bothering to check the reservation list. The words hung in the air between them, sharp and jarring against the background noise of clinking dishes and quiet conversation. Evelyn, taken aback, hesitated, giving him a moment to reconsider. Surely there must be a misunderstanding. This was her son's restaurant, after all, a place that had welcomed her countless times, where she'd never felt anything less than at home. "Perhaps there's been an oversight," she said gently, trying to keep her tone kind despite the irritation creeping up inside her. "I called yesterday to confirm my reservation." The waiter sighed impatiently, his tone laced with annoyance. "I said there are no tables available. You should try somewhere else." Evelyn felt her heart sink at the indifference in his voice. This wasn't merely an oversight or a lapse in customer service. It felt intentional, like a wall being erected between them. She couldn't shake the impression that he'd made up his mind about her before she even spoke. For a moment she wondered if she should just turn around and leave, but a deeper instinct kept her rooted to the spot. Steeling herself, Evelyn looked him directly in the eye. "Could you please check the reservation list? My name is Evelyn, and I made a booking." The waiter crossed his arms, a slight smirk flickering across his face. His eyes seemed to hold a mixture of disdain and impatience. "There's nothing for you here. You should leave," he repeated, his voice cold and unyielding. Those words pierced Evelyn's composure, stirring up emotions she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. "Nothing for you here." The phrase felt heavy, loaded with an unspoken judgment. This was not the first time she'd felt such treatment, but she'd rarely encountered it so bluntly, especially in a place that held such personal meaning. Evelyn had spent her life dealing with quiet exclusions, with subtle indications that she wasn't quite welcome in certain spaces. She remembered similar instances in her youth, when a quiet dismissal or averted gaze had told her she didn't belong. Over the years, she had learned to brush these moments aside, to carry on with quiet dignity and strength. But here in her son's restaurant, it felt like a betrayal, a cruel reminder of a painful reality she thought she had left behind. Taking a deep breath, Evelyn steadied herself, determined to stand her ground. "Perhaps you don't know who I am," she said, her voice calm but firm. The waiter gave a derisive chuckle, his expression unchanged. "I don't care who you are," he replied, his tone dripping with disdain. "There's no place for people like you here." The phrase hit her like a blow, dredging up years of silent endurance, of forcing herself to hold her head high in the face of quiet exclusion. "People like you." She knew the weight of those words, the unspoken barrier they signified. For a moment she felt herself shrink, the years of enduring indignities threatening to overwhelm her. But as she stood there facing this young man's scornful gaze, something inside her shifted. She wasn't going to let this happen, not here, not in a place she held dear. Meanwhile, the restaurant manager, noticing the exchange, approached with a concerned expression. "Is there an issue here?" he asked, glancing between Evelyn and the waiter. "Yes," Evelyn replied, her voice steady. "I have a reservation, and I'm being told there are no tables available." The manager looked at her, a hint of embarrassment crossing his face as he sensed the underlying tension. "I'm very sorry for the confusion," he said quickly. "We'll find you a table right away." However, Evelyn could see that his apology was more about appeasing her than addressing the deeper issue. He seemed eager to resolve the situation quietly, to avoid drawing attention to the uncomfortable reality that had just played out. But Evelyn wasn't satisfied with a superficial apology. "This isn't just about seating me," she said softly, her voice carrying a weight that made the manager pause. "It's about the way I was treated. It's about respect and dignity and the assumption that someone like me doesn't belong here." The manager's face reddened slightly, caught off guard by the directness of her words. He stammered, offering another hurried apology, but Evelyn remained unmoved. She felt the eyes of nearby diners on her, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and discomfort as they watched the interaction unfold. For the first time, she found herself unafraid of the attention, unafraid to stand her ground in a moment that demanded it. Just then, her son Thomas, who had been at work in his office nearby, noticed a video alert on his phone. He opened the notification, his heart sinking as he saw a short clip that had begun circulating online. The video captured Evelyn standing at the counter, confronting the waiter, her face resolute. The caption read, "Elderly woman denied service at her family's own restaurant." Thomas's face flushed with a mixture of anger and disbelief. He recognized his mother instantly, saw the hurt and quiet strength in her posture. Without hesitation, he rushed out of his office and headed straight to the restaurant, his mind racing as he replayed the incident over and over in his head. How could this have happened? How could his own establishment, a place he built on principles of inclusion and respect, allow such behavior? As Thomas entered the restaurant, a heavy silence fell over the patrons. They looked up, recognizing him, and the tension in the room grew palpable. The waiter's face turned pale as he realized who Thomas was. His earlier arrogance faded, replaced by a growing sense of dread. Thomas walked directly to the counter, his eyes locked on the waiter with a steely gaze. "You're fired," he said, his voice cold and unyielding. The words were firm, leaving no room for negotiation or excuses. The waiter swallowed, his face ashen, unable to respond. Thomas didn't wait for an apology or explanation. He had no patience for either. His focus was now on restoring the dignity of the place, on honoring the values his mother had instilled in him, the values that had built the foundation of his business. Turning to the manager, Thomas's tone softened slightly. though his disappointment was unmistakable. "I trusted you to ensure that everyone who walks through these doors is treated with respect," he said. Clearly, that trust was misplaced. The manager nodded, his expression filled with remorse as he offered a stammered apology. But Thomas cut him off, unwilling to let the moment pass without addressing the broader issue. He took a step back, facing the patrons in the room, his voice carrying a gravity that silenced the quiet murmurs. "What happened today was wrong," he began, his voice steady and resonant. "No one, no matter who they are, should ever be made to feel like they don't belong. Not here, and not anywhere." A quiet murmur of agreement rippled through the room, and several patrons broke into a soft, respectful applause. Evelyn, who had been standing quietly nearby, felt a swell of pride in her son, a profound sense of validation. This was more than just a moment of standing up for herself, it was a statement. A commitment to the values she had taught her children, values that were now echoed in the actions of her son. In the days following the incident, the story spread rapidly. Social media posts, news outlets, and community members rallied around Evelyn's story, sharing messages of support and gratitude. The restaurant, once a beloved local spot, became a symbol of resilience, integrity, and community. Evelyn's quiet strength and Thomas's decisive action became an inspiration for others who had experienced similar exclusions. Thomas took immediate steps to ensure that the incident would never be repeated. He implemented a comprehensive inclusivity training program for all staff members and invited local leaders to participate in conversations about respect, equity, and community values. The response was overwhelming. Patrons flocked to the restaurant in greater numbers than ever, eager to support a business that had taken a stand against discrimination. Evelyn, watching from the sidelines, felt a quiet satisfaction that went beyond personal pride. She had always believed in the power of resilience, in facing adversity with dignity and grace. This experience reminded her of the importance of standing up for what was right, not only for herself but for others who might lack the voice to do so. In the end, her quiet defiance had sparked a ripple effect, inspiring a movement of respect, inclusion, and unity within the community. The restaurant continued to thrive, now carrying a new legacy, a legacy of dignity, strength, and unwavering principles. Evelyn remained a cherished part of its story, a symbol of resilience and grace. And as she sat at her favorite table, surrounded by family and friends, she knew that her journey had come full circle. The fight for respect and dignity was one she had carried quietly for years. But now it was a legacy that would endure, shaping the lives and hearts of everyone who walked through those doors. In her quiet moments, Evelyn reflected on the journey that had led her here. It was not an easy path, but she wouldn't have had it any other way. She knew that change often came from the smallest acts of courage, and she had chosen to stand her ground, paving the way for a brighter, more inclusive future. And in that restaurant, amid the warm lights and familiar laughter, Evelyn had found not only a safe space but a testament to her resilience, a legacy that would continue to inspire for generations to come.